Welcome to Marrakesh. Welcome to the Policy Center for the New South. And welcome to the Atlantic Dialogue in Marrakesh. And welcome a very important person, Senen Florensa. Bienvenue. And you are the Executive Vice President, European Institute for the Mediterranean. So what does that mean?
Well, that means that at our institute, which I am now executive president, we've been working since 1989 in favor of the Mediterranean, and especially since 1995 in what has been called the Barcelona process, and now we try to support the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership and the Union for the Mediterranean under the following idea. The principle is very simple. We believe that the best future for countries, especially in south and east of the Mediterranean, is their way to progress in political terms, economic terms, social terms, cultural terms, in association with Europe. And so our focus, we are a think tank, and so our focus is study and research, policy-oriented, so that we try to offer which best possibilities exist to have a European policy in favor of the east and west of the South Mediterranean countries.
But if we look now, and you're the expert, if we look now at the Mediterranean and the problems which exist, I'm not even pointing out all the problems you know, whether it's Libya, Tunisia, the boats, the migrants, and so. What can you practically do? You can propose something to the governments, but for example, migration from Morocco to Las Palmas, what can you do?
There are different things. Of course, one is what everybody sees, which is what has to be done today, tomorrow, next week.
Yes.
Which is to fight against mafias, etc. But this is something epiphenomenal, which is important, because otherwise we would get far right-wing parties in Europe if there is a disorder in...
It's starting.
Yes. But the only way to tackle it, in fact, is to go to the cause roots of migration. And so to help these countries, and not necessarily Maghreb countries or North African countries, but the rest of Africa, to have a better future for their people so that they stay in their countries instead of risking even their lives to go to somewhere they don't know. And well, this is what has to be done. I know that this is difficult, but it's the only way.
But in your studies, because that's for me, a very important question. In your studies, you probably have seen that everything has been tried. Coast guards, money to various countries to stop the flow of immigrants and migrants, but we still see an incredible flood. Is there anything in your projection where you say the only reasonable thing is a Marshall Plan for Central Africa, or there is whatever?
Call it as you want, Marshall Plan or whatever.
Okay.
But you see, the evolution of demography has its own rhythm according to the socio-cultural evolution. In the Maghreb countries, in fact, it is a phenomenon that's over. Morocco, for example, or Tunisia. Tunisia, I lived there for a few years as Spanish ambassador, so I know very well Tunisia, and I've been working with our Moroccan friends for 30 years. At the moment of the independence in both countries in '56, the fertility rate was 7.3 children per woman. Now it is 2.01, 2.03 in both countries. So it's a phenomenon that's about to finish. The point is that
You mean the pressure is not there?
I mean now the young people who arrive to the labor market are the people who were born 20 years back, or 25 years back, or maybe 30 years back, when they were still a very high fertility rate, because this is a recent, this transition, demographic transition, is a recent phenomenon. And the same will happen somehow in the rest of Africa. But we have
You mean there is a reduction?
There will be.
Yes, there will be.
Because behind this very simple figure, from 7.3 to 2.1, there is an immense transformation of the mentalities, of the role of women in the economy, in the transformation of the family structure, from patriarchal families to more, let's say, modern families, of the education, especially of women and girls. So there is an immense transformation, and this is taking place.
You think nature will help us?
No, nature is doing its job.
Yes.
We have to do ours.
Yes.
And let me add something. I think that in general, the European public has not yet realized the immense effort that the Europeans will have to do, to carry on, to help Africa in this process of social modernization and economic development, etc. Because otherwise, the beautiful welfare state that we have created in Europe will not be sustainable. And of course, this, you may call it Marshall Plan, whatever you want, but to have to speak with real figures. In the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership, for example, along the last 20 years, we have had more or less about the same amount of budget. That was 1 billion euros for the whole of the countries in the southern east rim of the Mediterranean, plus 2 billion from the European Investment Bank, according to the pipeline of the projects every year, more or less. And we've been asking that this is not enough because it's a big population and 10 countries, some of them very big, as Egypt, for example, etc. And with many deep problems. There was no answer. Then came the COVID and the necessity to take measures inside Europe. And out of the blue,
money was there.
750 billion appeared. So you didn't say there was nothing?
The Vatican sent it.
Okay, so we have to take African affairs very, very seriously and support the right people. And support the right people means that the population have to visualize that their best future is to grow and to evolve in a positive way with the right people with whom to be in association.
That's true, but where do you find them and how do you realize change?
Well, we have to do it together through the European Union. You see, we have inherited a very bad mental beverage.
Frame.
Because of the colonialism, the fight for independence, the independence movements, regimes that followed the independence movements because they were the ones who had done more merits, planting bombs or fighting, etc. We had to overcome this inheritance from colonial times. And European countries, national countries in Europe, for them it's a very difficult task. French are a very clear case. I am not against France, quite on the contrary. But it's difficult for them. But if it's done through the European Union, then I think we have the best chances to present the European let's say, help, which is do things together in investment, in trade, etc. We will have the opportunity to do it with a much better perception. And that's what we try to do at our institute, to promote European policies toward the south of the Mediterranean and the rest of Africa.
Do you see in your studies and your own observation any country in Europe where you would say they're doing almost as good as one can? Let's say Spain with migrants in Las Palmas. The Italians are suffering a lot, other countries are suffering a lot. Are they dealing in accordance to their European spirit or national spirit?
No, I think that this is, in Spanish, we would call it parches. So to put a patch, whenever you have
emergency help.
Yes. And as I was saying, this has to be done, of course. But
to stop the first bleeding,
yes,
but the operation.
And we have to take the measures necessary for that. And we have to work together with the countries, with the governments and the countries of origin and the countries of transit. Morocco, for example, is no more a country of emigration. It's a country of transit.
Absolutely.
And from Morocco, we have very good agreements, for example, in Spain, and with other countries in this part of the world as well. But they have to perceive that they can gain something working together with the Europeans to put the parch as an emergency, but then to overcome the difficulties they have and to help them to be more stable. Without stability is not possible.
Without economic
progress,
strength. Yeah.
And to have economic development. And it's the only way. I know that the Chinese are, for example, here and there, creating some infrastructure, welcome. Or the Russians are with other instruments, somewhere in the Sahel, for example, with the Wagner Group and so on. But really, I am deeply convinced that for the countries of the whole of Africa, their best chance for progress is in association with Europe, because the world is evolving towards some kind of regionalism, and therefore there's much talk about this kind of crisis of globalization of the global economy, especially since the pandemic and the interruption of the supplies and things like, and this phenomenon of reshoring. And this is here to stay, because it had not
migration.
No, I mean the reallocation of industries that
global?
have gone to China and now come back to Morocco, for example. I know a few examples in the textile or in the automobile parts, etc.
So they come back.
Because it's much better to have to produce the goods near to the marketplace, and for Maghreb countries, more than 50, and some countries more than 60% of their exports is to the European Union, of course, and for the Africa as a whole, more than 30%, 36% of their exports are to Europe, not to Russia, to China, but it's only 18%.
Okay.
Among them, foreign trade of individual African countries, summing up their exports. Among them, the exports intra-Africa are only 18% as well of the overall foreign trade of African countries. So that means that they are by force to work with the Europeans, and that's what because there is the big European market that's at their disposal through the trade agreements and so on, and an investment, and offering a good framework for that. I think that's.
But that means also we can't block these people from coming from Africa to Europe. If you want to have good relations, you can't send back the people to Libya or back the people to Mali or to Mauritania or whatever.
It depends on how you do it.
Yes, yes. But then
we do that in Spain, and we have good relations with countries of origin. But you have to accompany it. Well, I'm not saying that Spain is doing it 100% well, but since we are in the first line of the European relation with Africa, we have developed a lot of agreements with different African countries.
And they work?
And they work reasonably well, of course, not 100%, maybe only 60%.
That's already good.
But the big effort in favor of Africa is yet to come. And it is very important, I think, to convince the European public opinion of its necessity. Because, as I'm saying, otherwise, the beautiful welfare state that we've been created in Europe will not be sustainable because of many political, social, and other problems. And therefore, that's a necessity. And in the same way that we found out of the blue an incredible budget when an epidemic came into Europe, we'll have to find incredible budget for other kind of epidemics in other places that are important for us.
Monsieur Ambassador, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure. Okay. I hope everything works out well.
Let's hope it. We'll have to work on that direction. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Great pleasure.